If you love emotional storytelling, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because this is just the beginning of a journey you won't forget. Sit right and grab some popcorn. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and it was the kind of call that changes everything. Adaeze was awake. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, her body running on black coffee, and the kind of desperate energy that comes when you realize your life is about to be decided by everyone except you. She was sitting on the floor of her studio apartment in Lagos, surrounded by paintings she'd never sell and dreams she'd never pursue, when her phone buzzed with an email notification from an unknown address. The subject line was empty. The message contained only coordinates and a time: 11:47 p.m., Seoul Standard Time. 3 days from now. She was about to delete it as spam when she noticed the signature. M. Her heart stopped. She'd been corresponding with M for 6 months. He was taking the same online art history course that she was, a student who showed up to every video call looking like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. But unlike the other students who posted their assignments and participated politely, M engaged with her work. He'd commented on every single one of her papers, challenged her interpretations, sent her links to obscure artists she'd never heard of, and slowly, without either of them acknowledging it, they'd begun to exist in each other's consciousness in a way that felt dangerous and essential and completely inevitable. She'd never seen his face clearly. The video connection was always poor during their calls, his camera angled, so you could only see his chin and jaw. But she'd memorized the sound of his voice, the way he pronounced English words with a Korean accent, the hesitation before he said something vulnerable, the laugh that came out rare and genuine and like a gift he was giving her reluctantly. Adaeze stared at the coordinates. She had a laptop open next to her with the map application already running. She typed in the numbers with shaking hands. The location was a rooftop bar in Gangnam, Seoul. Right in the heart of the city where her mother had told her never to go, where corporate boardrooms made decisions that affected millions, where the kind of wealth existed that she couldn't even comprehend from her small apartment in Lagos. What was M doing sending her coordinates to Seoul? She typed back immediately. "Who are you?" The response came within seconds. Asterisk, someone who's been running out of time to tell you the truth. Someone who's made mistakes. Someone who's about to make the biggest mistake of his life and needs to know if you'll be there when everything falls apart. Asterisk, her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely type. What kind of mistake? Asterisk, the kind that destroys families. The kind that gets you disowned. The kind that's worth it if you're standing next to someone who understands what it means to be willing to lose everything. Asterisk, Adaeze stood up and walked to her window. Lagos was asleep below her, the city lights creating patterns that reminded her of neural pathways, connections firing, signals crossing, communication happening in the darkness. Asterisk, I don't even know you. Asterisk, she typed. Asterisk, yes you do. You know the parts of me that matter. You know that I'm terrified. You know that I hate my life. You know that I want to be something other than what I'm supposed to be. That's more than I know about anyone else in this city. Asterisk, she pressed her forehead against the window glass. It was cool against her skin, grounding her in the present moment even as her mind spiraled into possibility and terror. Asterisk, why are you doing this? Asterisk, she asked. The response took longer this time. Long enough that she thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. Long enough that she could feel her hope beginning to fracture at the edges. Then, asterisk, because I heard you cry during the class presentation on Frida Kahlo. Because you said that her pain was more beautiful than her happiness, and that sometimes the best art comes from the parts of us that are breaking. Because I'm breaking, Adaeze. And I need to know if it's possible to break together instead of alone. Asterisk, the next 3 days were impossible. Adaeze tried to focus on her actual life, but it had become surreal, like she was watching herself from outside her body. Her father was in the living room discussing her future with her mother, making plans for her engagement to Chisholm, the son of a family friend, a man with money and status, and the kind of future that her parents had decided was good enough for her. She heard them through the walls. She's getting to that age, her mother was saying, her voice carrying the resignation of a woman who had learned not to want things. If we don't arrange something soon, people will start to talk. Her father's response was sharp. She has no choice in this matter. Her education is sufficient. Now it's time for her to become a wife. In another life, in another version of this moment, Adaeze would have gone into that living room and fought. She would have argued and pleaded and explained why she needed more time, why she needed to figure out who she was before she figured out who she was supposed to be for someone else. But in this life, the one where a stranger in Seoul was slowly becoming the only person who understood her, she just sat in her room and counted the hours. She researched M obsessively. She tried to find him on social media, but there was nothing, no Instagram, no Facebook, no digital footprint of any kind. It was as if he existed only in emails and in the careful way he spoke during their video calls, which made her wonder if he was real at all, if maybe she'd imagined him during one of her insomnia nights, conjured him from her desperate need for someone to understand. But the emails kept coming. Asterisk, I'm terrified. Asterisk, he wrote. Asterisk, I've made the decision, and now I can't unmake it. I've told my mother that I'm not taking over
company.
I've told her that I'm not going to the arranged engagement with the woman she chose. I've told her that I want to do something with my life that actually matters to me. And she hasn't spoken to me in 2 days. Asterisk. Adaeze found herself offering comfort to this stranger. What did you want to do? She asked. Asterisk, I want to understand art. Not as an investment. Not as something to buy and sell and use to impress people. I want to understand it as a way of saying things that can't be said with words. I want to spend time in places that are beautiful and create things that are real. And I want, asterisk, the email paused, and she could feel the vulnerability in that pause. I want to do it with someone who isn't terrified of breaking. I'm terrified of breaking, she wrote back. Asterisk, I break all the time. I've been breaking my whole life. Asterisk. Yes, he replied. That's exactly why I need you. The decision to go wasn't a decision at all. It was more like inevitability dressed up as choice. Adaeze told her parents she was going to a university conference in Accra, Ghana. She booked a flight that technically went to Accra but had a layover in Seoul. She withdrew money from her account. Not much. Enough for maybe 2 weeks if she was careful. She packed a backpack with clothes and her sketchbook and her mother's old camera, the one her mother had stopped using when life taught her that documenting beauty was a luxury for people who had the freedom to care about beautiful things. The night before her flight, her mother found her in the small studio space she'd set up in the corner of her room. Adaeze was painting the sea, not the sea she'd ever actually seen, but the sea she imagined existed between continents, the space between where she was and where she was going. You're leaving, her mother said. It wasn't a question. Adaeze's hands froze on the canvas. Just for a conference. You're leaving, her mother repeated, and there was something in her voice that sounded like understanding mixed with sorrow. You're running away. The same way I wanted to run away when I was your age. The same way I should have run away. Adaeze turned to face her mother fully. She hadn't looked at her mother really, looked past the tired eyes and the settled shoulders, in a long time. Are you going to tell father? She asked. Her mother smiled, a small, sad smile that held within it decades of compromises and abandoned dreams.
No, she said.
I'm going to tell him you have a fever and can't travel. You'll have maybe a week before he figures out the truth. Use that time wisely. She set something on Adaeze's desk, a small carved figurine, beautiful and old. My mother gave this to me the day I made the choice to marry your father, her mother said. I chose safety instead of passion. I chose stability instead of love. I thought those were responsible decisions. But they were just decisions. And they cost me the part of myself that could create. She leaned down and kissed Adaeze's forehead. Go, she whispered. Go and be foolish. Go and be in love. Go and be everything I was too afraid to be. And if it breaks you, at least you'll have known what it felt like to not be broken. Adaeze cried then. The kind of tears that come when someone who has always been disappointed in you suddenly sees you for who you actually are. The flight to Seoul took 13 hours, and every minute of it felt like holding her breath underwater, waiting to see if she could survive on hope and desperation alone. She'd confirmed with M that she was coming. She'd given him her flight number, her arrival time. He'd sent back one email. Asterisk, I'm going to ask you to do something crazy when you get here. I'm going to ask you to help me disappear. Not forever. Just long enough for my mother to understand that I'm not going to be what she wants. Just long enough for me to figure out what I actually am. Are you willing to do that? Asterisk, she responded with one word. Yes, the Incheon International Airport hit her like a physical force. It was sterile and overwhelming and filled with people who all seemed to know exactly where they were going. She felt very small, very African, very out of place in her colorful traditional wrapper and the vintage leather jacket she'd found at a market in Lagos. Her phone buzzed as she was walking through customs. Asterisk, I see you. The girl in the red wrapper. Turn around slowly. Asterisk, her heart was in her throat as she turned. And then she saw him. He was tall and slender, dressed in black jeans and a white shirt that somehow made him look both corporate and vulnerable at the same time. His hair fell across his forehead in a way that made her want to touch it. But it was his eyes that stopped her. They were the eyes she'd imagined during 100 sleepless nights, dark and intense and carrying something like recognition. They stared at each other across the airport terminal, and it was the kind of moment that felt too significant for reality, too perfect for actual life. It felt like the moment right before something massive breaks and you know it's going to break, and you're terrified and excited because at least finally something is going to happen. He started walking toward her, and his walk was careful, like he was afraid if he moved too fast the moment would shatter. Hi, he said when he reached her. His accent was stronger in person, his English wrapped around a vulnerability that made her heart feel like it was vibrating at a frequency that didn't belong in the normal world.
I'm Min-Jun.
I'm also insane. I'm also completely in love with someone I've never met. I'm also about to potentially destroy my family's business empire and my relationship with my mother. Are you also insane? Adaeze couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight, her heart was too loud. Her entire body felt like it was made of electricity and fear and the kind of love that you read about in books and never quite believe is real until it's standing in front of you in an airport terminal in a city you've never been to. Yes, she finally managed.
I'm insane.
He reached out and touched her face like he was checking to make sure she was real. His hand was warm and shaking, and she leaned into it like she'd been waiting her entire life for someone to touch her like she mattered. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry that I'm asking you to do this. I'm sorry that I'm a mess. I'm sorry that my mother has probably already started looking for me, and in about 6 hours, people are going to know that I'm missing, and the story is going to be everywhere. What story? She asked. The story of the corporate heir who disappeared, he said. The story of the man who chose love over legacy. The story that my mother will use to destroy me in the press, to discredit me with my own family, to try to bring me back under her control. He took her hand. But I don't care, he continued. Because you're here. Because you chose to be here. Because somehow, across 6,000 miles and everything that was supposed to keep us apart, you came. The apartment he'd rented was in a neighborhood that didn't make sense for someone from his background. It was small and modest and filled with art, paintings and sculptures and photographs that suggested the person living here had actual taste instead of just money. I've been preparing for this for months, Min-Jun said as he showed her around. Slowly pulling money out of my personal accounts without my mother knowing. Looking for a place that wasn't connected to the family business. Creating a separate identity. Playing a game I knew I'd lose eventually, but hoping that when I did lose, I'd have somewhere safe to land. And now I'm here, Adaeze said. So you have somewhere safe to land? No, he said, turning to face her. Now I have someone. And that's infinitely more dangerous because if something happens to you because of my choices, I will never forgive myself. She wanted to tell him that nothing would happen, that they would figure it out, that love would be enough. But she was too old and too tired to believe in false promises, even when she was the one making them. Instead, she said, tell me everything. Tell me the truth about who you are. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about the company. Tell me everything that I need to understand so that I can make an informed decision about whether I'm actually insane or just in love. So Min-Jun told her. He told her about growing up in a penthouse overlooking Seoul, about having everything except freedom. He told her about his father, who had died when Min-Jun was 15, leaving behind a business empire and an absence that had shaped every single day since. He told her about his mother, a brilliant, ruthless woman who had taken over the company and decided that her son would inherit it whether he wanted to or not. "She doesn't see me as a person," he said. They were sitting on the small balcony of the apartment, watching the lights of Seoul flicker below them. "She sees me as an investment, as the continuation of the family name, as an asset to be controlled and managed and optimized." And when I tried to tell her that I didn't want that life, when I tried to say that I wanted to do something that actually mattered to me, she looked at me like I was insane. "Are you?" Adaeze asked gently. "Probably," he said. "But I'm done being the kind of insane that other people expect. I want to be insane in my own way. I want to be insane with someone who understands what it means to choose yourself over everything." He turned to face her, and in the light from Seoul's night sky, she could see his face clearly for the first time. He was beautiful in a way that was almost painful to look at, beautiful in the way of people who are suffering and too intelligent not to know it. "When my mother finds me," he said, "and she will find me, she's going to offer me a choice. Go back to the family, become what she wants, and be financially secure for the rest of my life. Or stay with you, lose everything, and have absolutely no guarantee that this will work out. What are you going to choose?" she asked, though she was terrified of the answer. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I want to choose you. I want to choose this. I want to choose something real instead of something safe. I just need you to promise that you won't resent me when the choice becomes harder than we can imagine." Adaeze took his hand and placed it over her heart. "I can't promise that this will work out," she said. "I can't promise that we won't hurt each other, or that this won't end in tragedy. But I can promise that I'm here. I can promise that I chose this. And I can promise that whatever happens next, I will choose you again. Every single time." He kissed her then, and it was the kind of kiss that felt like saying goodbye and hello at the same time. It was the kind of kiss that tasted like everything they were risking and everything they might gain. It was the kind of kiss that changed the trajectory of both their lives, and they both knew it in that moment. The next morning, his phone exploded. The story had leaked before he'd even had a chance to control it. Park Min-Jun, heir to Park Holdings, missing after family disagreement. The news was everywhere, on Korean television, in business publications, on social media. The family's PR team was working overtime to contain the narrative, to make it seem like Min-Jun was having some kind of mental health crisis that could be fixed if he just came back home. His mother called 17 times. His uncle called. His business managers called. Everyone wanted something from him, and he sat on the apartment's floor, staring at his phone, looking like someone whose entire world was disintegrating in real time. "I have to go back," he said quietly. "I have to at least talk to her. Explain to her face to face that I'm making this choice intentionally." "No," Adaeze said, and her voice was sharp. "You're in shock. You're overwhelmed. You're going to go back to that penthouse, and you're going to be faced with your mother's tears and your uncle's disappointment, and they're going to convince you that you're being selfish. They're going to convince you that the responsible thing is to come back to the company. And you're going to believe them because part of you has been trained your entire life to believe them. So, what do?" he demanded. "I can't hide here forever. Eventually they're going to find me. Eventually someone is going to figure out that you're here, and then they'll try to use me against you," she finished. "They'll try to convince you that I'm a gold digger or a fortune hunter, or that I'm just using you for a green card. They'll try to drive a wedge between us." She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city where his mother was probably strategizing her next move. "So we need to be strategic," Adaeze said. "We need to play their game better than they can play it. We need to show them that this isn't some impulsive love affair. We need to show them that you're not having a crisis. You're having a transformation. And that transformation is permanent." "How do we do that?"
Min-Jun asked.
Adaeze turned to face had shifted from vulnerable to calculating. "You tell your mother that you'll see her," she said. "But only if she comes here. Only if she comes to this apartment and meets me. Because once she meets me, once she sees that I'm a person and not just a threat, maybe she'll be able to see you as a person too. Maybe she'll be able to understand that you're making a choice, not having a breakdown." "She'll never agree to that," Min-Jun said. So you make her agree, Adaeze replied. You tell her that you have leverage. You tell her that you have documentation of the way the company has been hiding money from shareholders. You tell her that if she doesn't come here and have this conversation, you're going to release that documentation to the government.
Min-Jun zerrte her.
Do you have that documentation? He asked slowly.
No, she said.
But your mother doesn't know that. And she's going to assume that someone inside the company has turned against her. She's going to assume that you're serious. And she's going to come here because the alternative, a public scandal that could destroy everything she's built, is worse. And pulled her into his arms, and she could feel him shaking.
Eivind lo.
He stood V with you, he said against her hair. I'm in love with someone who's willing to commit corporate espionage on behalf of our relationship. That has to be the most insane thing I've ever experienced. Welcome to my life, she said. Now call your mother. The call was both easier and harder than Min-Jun expected. He told his mother where to find him. He made the threat about the documentation vague enough to be terrifying, specific enough to be credible. He gave her an ultimatum. Come to the apartment tomorrow at 10 a.m., alone, and listen to what he had to say. Otherwise, the story becomes public. She agreed, which told him that she was either genuinely concerned or was planning something catastrophic. Possibly both. Adaeze spent the day preparing, cleaning the apartment, arranging art books on the coffee table, making the space look like a place where serious conversations happened instead of a space where two people in love were hiding from the world. What if she hates me? Adaeze asked as they waited for the next morning. They were lying in bed, and she was tracing patterns on Min-Jun's chest, trying to memorize the geography of his heartbeat. She will hate you, Min-Jun said bluntly. She'll see you as the person who convinced me to throw away my future. She'll see you as a threat to the family legacy. She'll see you as everything that's wrong with my choices. And you're okay with that? Adaeze asked. No, he admitted. But I've been trying to make my mother proud my entire life, and it's never been enough. So maybe it's time to stop trying. Maybe it's time to accept that she's not going to approve of this, and I'm going to do it anyway. When his mother arrived, Adaeze understood where Min-Jun had gotten his intelligence and his intensity. She was a woman in her 60s with the kind of presence that seemed to make the apartment itself smaller. She was wearing a designer suit and an expression of such cold fury that Adaeze almost felt sorry for the city of Seoul itself. Where is it? His mother demanded without bothering with greetings. Where is what?
Min-Jun asked calmly.
The documentation. The evidence you supposedly have against the company. It's being held by someone outside the country. Min-Jun lied smoothly. If anything happens to me or to the person standing next to me, it gets released. His mother's eyes flicked to Adaeze, and Adaeze felt the weight of her assessment like a physical force. She was being evaluated, measured, found wanting. You're African, his mother said, not as a statement of fact but as an accusation.
I'm Nigerian, Adaeze replied.
My name is Adaeze. I'm an artist and a student, and I'm in love with your son. How much are you asking for? His mother asked directly. I'm not asking for anything, Adaeze said. I came here knowing that I would probably lose everything. I came here knowing that I might end up with nothing. I came here because I love him. Something flickered in his mother's expression. Not acceptance, but maybe a recognition that Adaeze was not the villain she'd imagined. You're asking me to believe that you love my son so much that you're willing to have no security, no future, no guarantee of anything, his mother said. Yes, Adaeze said simply. Min-Jun's mother sat down on the apartment's small couch like her legs had stopped supporting her weight. For the first time, she looked less like a corporate titan and more like a woman who was exhausted from carrying everything alone. Your father used to say that love was a luxury, she said quietly, addressing neither of them in particular. He said that once you have money, you protect it. You don't risk it on romantic notions. He said that sacrifice is what separates people who build empires from people who just exist. She looked at Min-Jun. I think he was wrong, she continued. I think he was wrong, and I've spent the last 30 years proving him right, and I'm tired. I'm tired of protecting the legacy. I'm tired of making sure you become what I decided you should become. I'm tired of being alone in this. Mother, Min-Jun said, and his voice was breaking. Don't, she said, putting up her hand. Don't apologize. Don't try to fix this. Just tell me and be honest. Do you love her? Is this real? Yes, Min-Jun said without hesitation. His mother nodded slowly, and there was something like resignation in that nod, but also something like relief. Then you're disowned, she said. Effectively, immediately. The family will not support you financially. The company will not support you. You will have your personal accounts. I'm not going to destroy you completely. But everything else is gone. She stood to leave, and at the door, she paused. Don't come back, she said. Not to the company. Not to the family events. Not until you've proven that you can build something real. And then maybe we can talk about whether love is worth the cost. When she was gone, Min-Jun collapsed, and Adaeze held him while he cried, not for the loss of the company, but for the loss of the hope that his mother would ever understand him. The following 6 months were the hardest and most beautiful of their lives. They moved to a smaller apartment in a neighborhood that neither of their families would think to look. Min-Jun got a job at an art gallery, working for barely enough to live on, but finally doing something he actually cared about. Adaeze continued her studies online and started selling her paintings at local markets and in small galleries that were willing to take a chance on an unknown African artist in Seoul. They were broke and stressed and terrified about the future. They fought about money and about their families and about whether this had been a mistake. But underneath all of it, there was something real, something that had been forged in the moment they risked everything for each other. It was Min-Jun who received the message first. An email from his mother. I've been thinking about what you said. About love being worth more than legacy. I'm going to restructure the company. I'm going to find someone else to run it, someone who actually wants it. And I'm going to try to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by my career. I'm sorry it took me losing you to understand that. He called Adaeze, and they sat in their small apartment and cried together, but these were different tears, tears that tasted like hope instead of despair. And then, a month later, his mother showed up at the gallery where he worked. She was smaller than Adaeze remembered, less intimidating, more human. She looked at Min-Jun's work on the walls, paintings he'd created, sculptures he'd curated, exhibitions he'd helped bring to life, and her expression was soft. You're happy, she said. It wasn't a question.
Yes, Min-Jun replied.
She turned to Adaeze, who was standing nearby, her hand resting on Min-Jun's arm. And you're the one who made this possible? His mother asked. No, Adaeze said. He made this possible. I just showed up. Min-Jun's mother smiled, a real smile, not a corporate smile, but something genuine.
Then thank you, she said.
For showing up. For staying. For loving my son in a way that I was too afraid to love him. She didn't ask for forgiveness, and they didn't offer it. But they did offer something more important. They offered acceptance. They offered the understanding that people could grow and change and become different versions of themselves than they'd been before. 3 years later, Adaeze held up her wedding dress for Min-Jun's mother to see. They were getting married in Lagos, in the same church where Adaze's parents had gotten married 30 years before. There would be traditional Korean ceremonies too, a blending of cultures and families that had once seemed impossible, but now felt inevitable. Min-Jun's mother was helping Adaeze get ready, and it felt like the most normal thing in the world. A mother and a daughter-in-law, preparing for a wedding, talking about love and commitment, and the terrifying beauty of building a life with someone. I was wrong about you, Min-Jun's mother said, helping adjust the dress. I thought you were taking my son away. But you gave him back to me. You gave him back to himself. He did that, Adaeze said. I just held his hand while he did it. No, Min-Jun's mother replied. You did more than that. You showed him that it was possible to break free. You showed him that the cost was worth the freedom. When Adaeze walked down the aisle, she could see Min-Jun waiting at the altar, and his face held the same expression it had held the day they met in the airport, like he could. He couldn't quite believe she was real, like he was constantly surprised that she had chosen him. The ceremony blended their traditions, Korean and Nigerian, traditional and contemporary, old and new. And when they exchanged vows, they spoke not of forever, because forever was too easy and too unreal. Instead, they spoke of choice. "I choose you today," Min-Jun said, his voice steady and certain. "And I will choose you tomorrow. And every day after that, I will wake up and choose this, you, us, the life we built together. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." And Adaeze, with tears streaming down her face, repeated the same words back to him. Because that's what love is, she had learned. It's not a feeling that carries you forward. It's a choice you make, every single day, to keep showing up. It's a commitment to stay, even when you could leave. It's the conscious decision to believe that the other person is worth the risk. Months later, they were back in Seoul, in their apartment that was no longer small but was filled with even more art, even more of their combined dreams made visible. Adaeze had her first major gallery exhibition, paintings from her years in Lagos, from her journey to Korea, from her time learning to be herself. The exhibition was called The Space Between, and it told the story of the 6,000 miles that had once separated them and the millions of miles they had traveled inside themselves to get to each other. Min-Jun stood in the gallery, watching people engage with her work, and he was reminded of the day they met in the airport, that moment where something impossible had become real. He thought about all the ways they could have missed each other, all the moments where one wrong decision would have meant their lives never intersected, all the probability that suggested they should never have met at all. But they had met, and in that meeting, they had found not just love, but themselves. He found Adaeze standing in front of her largest painting, an explosion of color and form that represented their journey together. "Tell me you don't regret this," he said, taking her hand. She turned to face him, and her smile was full of the kind of love that looked at all the sacrifices and the uncertainty and the risk, and chose to embrace it anyway. "Every single day, I regret nothing," she said. "And that terrifies me. Because I've realized that the only way to avoid regret is to never want anything badly enough to risk losing everything. But I wanted you that badly. And I would make that same choice, that same insane, reckless choice 1,000,000 times over." He kissed her, and it was the same kiss from that first day, filled with goodbye and hello, filled with everything they were risking and everything they were gaining. Around them, people were experiencing her art, being moved by her work, witnessing the visible manifestation of a love story that had spanned 2 continents and 1,000 impossible odds. And in that moment, in that gallery, surrounded by the evidence of their transformation, Min-Jun understood something fundamental. Love doesn't always begin with a smile. Sometimes it begins in the spaces between continents, between expectations, between who you were supposed to be and who you actually are. It begins in the darkness and the fear and the absolute certainty that you're making a mistake. But if you're brave enough to step into that space, if you're willing to risk everything for someone you've never met, if you can choose love even when it means losing everything else, then maybe, just maybe, you find something better than you lost. You find yourself. And you find someone who loves that version of you more than they love security or safety or the world's approval. And that, he realized, was the greatest art of all. If you love emotional storytelling, make sure you hit the subscribe button,